Hi. Those of you who've been with the channel for a while may notice I'm in a new location. So greetings from sunny Merida, Yucatan, in the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. I'll tell you more about my move here in a future video, but today I have a special video for you. I recently had a chance to talk with André, who's another English teacher here on iTalki, and André specializes in business English. So I decided to ask him some questions about preparing for job interviews. I hope you enjoy the video. So I have a guest today. We have an interview. André is here. André is also a teacher on iTalki. He specializes in business and interviews. So I thought we'd pick his brain a little bit on that topic. But first, before we get started, André, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell me a little bit about yourself and your background.
Hello, my name is Andre. I am from Chicago. I've been on iTalki for about 5 years now, and I left Chicago, traveled the world, currently in Brazil, and I focus on business communication, job interview preparation, and I love meeting professionals from different walks of life from all over the globe.
I guess the logical place to start is, what's your general advice for people who are preparing for an interview?
My general advice is to have a mindset that you're not just preparing for an interview, but you're preparing to meet your future coworkers. You're preparing to meet your future management, future peers. So when you go into the interview, don't be as nervous. Think more about how can I share my ideas, share my vision for what I want to do with the company. And don't focus just on what you want. Focus on how you can solve problems for the company and how you can help the company grow.
What are some common mistakes that people who are preparing for an interview should avoid, or some common problems that they should be aware of?
Ooh, the biggest problem, especially for our students and clients here on iTalki, is speaking. They get nervous when they're speaking, so they use a lot of ums and ahs, and they talk too quickly. So they talk about the things, everything they're doing too quickly, and then the interviewer has a hard time understanding, or may not want them because they want someone who speaks better English. Which in that case, they should talk to somebody like yourself or me, and we can help them improve their speaking ability.
What do interviewees often fail to prepare for?
Interviewees often fail to ask questions. They truly think the interview is one-sided and they're only prepared to answer questions, but they're not prepared to ask questions during the interview, such as asking follow-up questions. Many times interviewers will ask very broad questions, and if you ask a follow-up question, you can narrow the scope and make that question more impactful, make the answer more impactful. Another thing is related to that, asking questions at the end of the interview. Usually interviewees will have a chance to ask a few questions and they don't really prepare. They may just ask some questions that you can find the answer to on the website. So you should do some research and base your questions off of the research you have done.
That sounds like pretty good advice. And now, almost any kind of interview, whether it's for a job or anything else, always starts off with the same question. Tell me about yourself. So what's your strategy for students who work with you or people who you consult with? What's your strategy telling them how to prepare for this question, how to face this question?
So the first thing is I tell them about comedians. Comedians make a set of jokes and they go on tour around the country with those jokes. And every time they tell the jokes, they make adjustments based on crowd reaction. So you should write your self-introduction, usually about 150 words. It's about somewhere between 1 minute to 2 minutes. It can be shorter as well. Write your self-introduction, practice saying it every day, and then write a different version of it. Make some adjustments to it and practice with it a couple times a day. So if you know your interviews in a month, practice once a day. If you know your interviews in next week, practice 3 or 4 times a day and make changes. If words in your introduction are too hard for you to pronounce, make it simpler. Make sure it's impactful, make sure it's memorable, and then have other people listen to it. And of course, record yourself doing it.
If a student writes out specific text, should they read it during the interview? Should they try to memorize text in a certain order? Or should they use that as a framework from which they improvise their answers?
It depends on their level of English, their speaking ability. If they are a fluent speaker, then they can just use that text as talking points. If they have a good memory, they can memorize it and still have the text there as just to prompt them to give their responses and to stay on track. I actually coach my students to practice taking notes for 30 seconds, writing down 5 words in 30 seconds. But if their English level is not ideal, they may want to read. However, if they're going to be reading, they should focus on the delivery. So if you have the content there, you want to focus on delivering it in a natural way. So if you're going to be reading, practice reading a lot so it doesn't sound unnatural. However, you have to remember, if you're going to be reading, there's going to come a time where you can't read. They're going to ask you a question that you don't have a written answer for. So it's good to prepare. You can have some statements that you read from, but it's better to be able to speak impromptu because there's going to be a question that you have not prepared for.
Do you find people preparing for interviews often have a problem keeping their answers brief? Do you find a lot of people just simply talk on and on too much?
Yes. And many times they talk for a long time, but actually don't give a lot of information. So they're just using more words. They're not being concise. And what I advise people to do, what I coach people to do, watch the recording and ask yourself, was that engaging? Did I get the information I needed? And what could I trim out? What could I remove? And then they have to know, what areas should you go into more detail about? What areas should you go into less detail about? Basically based on the role and based on the question.
And then another common question I've found that people fail to prepare for are the behavioral questions. And they don't have stories prepared for answering behavioral questions. So what's your reaction to that? What's your advice that you would give?
Go to your resume from start to finish and be able to talk about every experience you've had in your resume, and then look for areas that are interesting. There's certain subjects that can answer multiple questions. Conflict, failure, successes, achievements, collaboration, time management, prioritization, leadership, innovation. Be able to talk about those topics and look for different positions. And that way you'll be able to answer those behavioral interview questions. So you can go to your most recent position, talk about a challenge you had. What was the situation? You can use the STAR method: situation, task, action, and result.
You mentioned the STAR method. What's the difference between the S situation and the T task? Are those really two different steps, or are they just using two different letters to fill out an acronym? What's the difference between the situation and the task?
So I tell people you can use STAR or you can just make up your own system, but it's really just about organization. So the S is the situation, the background information. I'm thinking the time, the place. For me, I like to do the S more is to set up the story. The T is actually about your responsibilities and who did you have to work with? And then the A, what did you actually do? So the S and the T are kind of interchangeable. You can make the S more about the situation. Oh, I was working for this company 2 years ago and I was in a leadership role. The project I was working on was going to impact 10,000 people and it had a value of $1 million. And I had to finish it within 1 month. I was working with a team of about 5 people. My responsibilities, now I'm switching over to the T, my responsibilities were to organize the project, to prioritize everything. And what was at stake was, if we did not get this prioritization right, there was a chance that we would miss the deadline. Then you can transition into the action. So what I did was I collaborated with this person, get into the action, then that. So S and T, yes, you can kind of put those together, but the whole point of STAR is just have some organization and include the important, relevant points.
That sounds like great advice. Before we wrap up, let me thank you for coming to do this interview with me today. It's been a great pleasure to have you on, and I'm sure your advice is very helpful for everyone who's listening. I'll provide a link to your iTalki profile in the description. Is there anything else you want to tell my audience before we wrap up?
Yes. Consistency, consistency, consistency. So if you are booking sessions, either with myself or with Jonathan, make sure that you are consistent. If you're tired, maybe you don't want to go to your session, you need to go, because if you want to improve, you have to make some adjustments to your schedule. You have to prioritize what's important to you. And communication is one of the most important things in this world because that's how we interact with each other. An excellent person like Jonathan can help you improve your communication. So stay consistent with it, book sessions, go to those sessions, and enjoy the process.
Hey, thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure. I'll be looking forward to talking with you in the future. Thanks again, Andre. Hi, thanks for watching. Remember, if you'd like to book private online English lessons with me or with Andre, look in the description box below. There you'll find links to our iTalki teacher profiles. If you've enjoyed the content, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you next time.